Words are powerful. Never doubt it. Proverbs 18:21 reminds us that both death and life are in the power of the tongue. According to the book of Genesis, it was merely God's spoken word that brought forth the earth and all its creatures. Nelson Mandela, who opposed the South African apartheid regime and was imprisoned for almost 3 decades, knew the power of words. He's often quoted today, but while in prison, his words couldn't be quoted for fear of repercussion. A decade after his release, he said, "It is never my custom to use words lightly. If 27 years in prison have done anything to us, it was to use the silence of solitude to make us understand how precious words are and how real speech is in its impact on the way people live and die." The Bible tells us stories of people who struggled with each other in an effort to receive a blessing, a good word from someone else. For instance, Jacob, the younger of the 2 sons of Isaac, tricked his blind father into blessing him instead of his brother Esau, who was rightfully entitled to Isaac's blessing. He did it by disguising himself to look and even smell like his brother. And so it was that the younger and consequently the lesser of the 2 sons received the blessing that had been intended for the older son. And when Jacob was lying on his own deathbed and it was time for him to bless his offspring, his son Joseph brought his own 2 sons to Jacob's bedside in order that they might receive Jacob's blessing. And at the last moment, Jacob broke custom by crossing his hands, placing his left hand on the older grandson's head and his right hand on the younger grandson. And so it was with just a few spoken words that Jacob gave the greater blessing to the lesser of the 2 grandsons. In this morning's gospel reading, Jesus is doing the same thing. He is well aware of the power of words. He knows that with just a few words, he can incite riot and revolution, or he can heal broken spirits. Before him stood people who were hungry for hope and thirsty for a blessing. Something, anything, to quench their spirits that had been crushed down by the Roman Empire. And so he introduces what has become known as the Sermon on the Mount with carefully chosen words of blessing, or Beatitudes, because that's what they needed. They needed to hear a good word, a blessing. Many of us are familiar with these Beatitudes. And even if we can't quote them word for word, when we hear them spoken, they take their place alongside other familiar words of comfort, like the 23rd Psalm or the Lord's Prayer. But the problem with familiarity is that after a while, words begin to lose their power. Beatitudes like, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted," or "Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth," sound so abstract, so unbelievable, that after hearing them a few dozen times, we quit pondering their meaning. And when that happens, it's usually good to hear them from a different voice than the one we are accustomed to hearing. So listen to this morning's Beatitudes, paraphrased by author and Bible scholar Eugene Peterson. You're blessed when you're at the end of your rope. With less of you, there is more of God and God's rule. You're blessed when you feel you've lost what is most dear to you. Only then can you be embraced by the one most dear to you. You're blessed when you're content with just who you are. No more, no less. That's the moment you find yourselves proud owners of everything that can't be bought. You're blessed when you've worked up a good appetite for God, who is food and drink in the best meal you'll ever eat. You're blessed when you care. At the moment of being full of care, you find yourselves cared for. You're blessed when you get your inside world, your mind and heart put right. Then you can see God in the outside world. You're blessed when you can show people how to cooperate instead of compete or fight. That's when you discover who you really are and your place in God's family. You're blessed when your commitment to God provokes persecution. The persecution drives you even deeper into God's realm. Not only that, count yourselves blessed every time people put you down or throw you out or speak lies about you to discredit me. What it means is that the truth is too close for comfort, and they are uncomfortable. You can be glad when that happens. Give a cheer even, for though they don't like it, I do, and all heaven applauds. And know that you are in good company. My prophets and witnesses have always gotten into this kind of trouble. And so with these carefully chosen words of blessing, Jesus was able to transform his listeners from discouraged to determined, from cast down to raised up, from fearful to hopeful. His words would give a taste of the upside-down realm of God about which he would spend the rest of his days preaching and teaching. An upside-down existence in which the last are raised up to be first, and the first are given the opportunity to see it from a different perspective. But Jesus isn't the only one with the power to bless. You and I can transform others with our words too. With just a few words, we can build up people or we can tear them down. We have within us a power that I believe we too often neglect. We can bless others with a meaningful touch, like the blessing that parents give to their children just by holding them. Friends and relatives convey blessing with their hugs. Sometimes just the light touch of a hand on one's back is all the blessing they need. Or like Jesus, we can invoke blessing with our words. When we say love is love, and Black Lives Matter, and no human is illegal, and women's rights are human rights, we are raising up with just our spoken word people who have been crushed down all their lives. But author James Gall reminds us that words plus meaningful touch are not a blessing unless high value is attached to the person being blessed. After a while, have a blessed day begins to ring false and hollow when it's thrown out to everyone we encounter. Each person is unique, and our blessings should be also. Words are indeed powerful. They can cut us to the quick, or they can give us wings with which to soar to the highest heavens. And so it is our moral responsibility to choose our words carefully. That's why I preach from a manuscript of carefully chosen words, instead of saying whatever comes to mind. We can delete posts on social media, and sometimes we can even edit those posts to say what we really meant. but we can never delete or edit our words once they have been spoken. That's one of the things that makes them so powerful. So let's take our cue from Jesus and bless each other with the reminder that God is in control. And when things look their bleakest, God is still in control. Let's join Jesus in undermining the traditional wisdom that might makes right, and reminding each other that it's only the meek, those who are content with what they have, who can possess the things that can't be bought. Let's seek to bless others instead of wasting our time grabbing at the brass ring only to discover that it's nothing but a brass ring. Let's put away our weapons and let's quit using our words to tear others down. Let's look into the eyes of the immigrant, the poor, the refugee, the person of color, the Muslim and Jew, the sexually marginalized, the disabled. Let's look into their eyes and bless them. And let's quit trying to justify why we won't, can't, or shouldn't. You see, it's not optional. It's our moral obligation. We'll be looking at Jesus' Sermon on the Mount in the next several weeks. And we will see over and over how important it is to bless others if we're going to call ourselves followers of Jesus, and if we ever hope to get a glimpse of the upside-down imperial rule of God. Do we follow the conventional wisdom of the world, or do we follow the words and way of Jesus? That's the question we each must answer. Amen.